they erased it. We found the file. Some machines didn't just break the rules, they rewrote them. A car that ran on water, a device that viewed time, a box that made objects float. They were built, filmed, demonstrated, then they disappeared. The inventors? Discredited, dead, or simply gone. The patents? Sealed or reassigned under military contract. The evidence? Buried under layers of silence, locked behind national security codes. We're told these ideas never worked, that they were science fiction. But documents tell another story. This isn't about theory. It's about what was taken. Inventions that could have collapsed empires, freed energy, rewritten civilization itself. And someone made sure you'd never see them. If even one of these is real, history must be rewritten. In 1971, a classified memo circulated through the United States Patent Office. It listed over 4,000 inventions that could not be granted clearance due to national security risk. Most were energy-related. Some involved advanced propulsion. A few had no known physical explanation. The file was marked confidential. Its contents remain largely unknown to this day. Throughout the 20th century, lone inventors and rogue engineers claimed to stumble on technologies that defied standard models. Energy drawn from vacuum fields, targeted frequency medicine, propulsion that required no fuel. Many produced blueprints, some produced functioning prototypes, and nearly all were silenced. Some died unexpectedly, others were bought out and vanished. A handful were ridiculed so thoroughly, their names became cautionary tales. But buried inside journals, court records, and seized lab footage, something persistent remains. Patterns. Unexplainable results followed by institutional denial. Military acquisition, patent suppression, disappearance. Why would governments suppress discoveries that could revolutionize transportation, health, or power? The answer is rarely given. But the systems that benefit from scarcity, oil, pharmaceuticals, centralized power, have much to lose. This is not a story about conspiracy. It's about documentation, about people who built the impossible, only to vanish from history. We traced them, the machines, the signatures, the final interviews. The pattern is undeniable. 10 inventions, 10 erasures, but a single question persists. What if they worked? From a levitating disc in Nevada to a vanishing device in Argentina, these 10 stories span continents and decades. Yet each ends the same way, erased. And when we began following the trail of one specific patent, a fuel cell design tested in Ohio in the 1980s, we didn't expect it to resurface inside a classified propulsion experiment 30 years later. But it did. What you're about to hear is not science fiction. It's a reconstruction of suppressed files, lost testimonies, and documented effects. And the first story is already classified. In November 1992, aerospace illustrator Mark McCandlish was scheduled to attend an air show at Norton Air Force Base. He never made it, but his colleague did, and came back shaken. In a closed hangar, behind armed guards, sat a craft unlike anything he had seen. Oval, domed, metallic. It floated silently above the ground. McCandlish later recreated what his contact described. A circular, lens-shaped vehicle, 25 feet wide, with concentric coil rings beneath the hull. It emitted no noise, and it hovered, apparently using no conventional fuel. The name whispered among staff was Alien Reproduction Vehicle, or simply the ARV. He began digging. What he found next rewrote his understanding of physics. Diagrams from Lockheed dating back to the 1950s. Notes describing a propulsion system based on high-voltage capacitor rings spinning liquid mercury. The internal configuration matched that of claimed Nazi Die Glocke experiments and mirrored principles described by electrogravitics pioneer T. Townsend Brown. According to McCandlish, the craft generated a focused gravitational field. It didn't fly. It fell in any direction it pointed. In 2001, McCandlish testified under oath at the National Press Club Disclosure Project, presenting the ARV schematics and naming engineers who had allegedly worked on the program. He urged Congress to investigate. He was never invited back. 2 weeks later, his home was broken into. His hard drives were erased. He lost contact with several collaborators. The Department of Defense has never acknowledged any project involving a vehicle resembling the Flux liner. No patents exist under McCandlish's name. But aerospace firm EG&G, long known to front for classified technologies at Area 51, received multiple propulsion contracts in the same fiscal year. McCandlish died in 2021. Official cause: suicide. But friends described him as upbeat, preparing for a new book release. No note was found. His ARV design remains in circulation, but no working replica has ever surfaced. Or if it did, it was never allowed to leave the lab. He never saw his son grow up. But that wasn't the only invention that should have changed the world. The next one didn't fly. It drove. But someone made sure you'd never drive it. But that wasn't the earliest record of inertial mass cancellation. In 1984, a man in Ohio claimed to run a dune buggy on water. In 1984, inventor Stanley Meyer unveiled a dune buggy that required no gasoline. Instead, it ran on water. The system was simple in principle, yet radical in implication. Meyer's water fuel cell used high-frequency voltage pulses to split water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen more efficiently than traditional electrolysis. The hydrogen gas was then combusted to power the engine. He called it a revolution in energy. And then he demonstrated it, publicly, repeatedly. Cameras recorded the buggy driving. Onlookers verified the tank contained only tap water. He was granted multiple patents under U.S. classifications 123-1R and 204-193. In a 1990 local television interview, Meyer stated, "It takes so little power to operate, the system recharges itself in motion." Scientists were skeptical, but tests confirmed anomalously low energy input. Then came the offers. One consortium reportedly offered him $1 billion for the technology. He refused. Soon after, his lab was burgled. Equipment was tampered with. Funding offers were pulled without explanation. In 1998, while meeting two Belgian investors at a restaurant, Meyer stood up mid-meal and staggered outside. He collapsed, clutching his throat, and said his final words, "They poisoned me." The coroner ruled it a cerebral aneurysm. No toxicology test was performed. His brother, Stephen Meyer, insists Stanley was assassinated. After his death, legal battles over the patents began. Courts ruled against his estate. A judge declared the technology fraudulent. Despite no peer-reviewed debunking, the buggy vanished. So did the prototypes. But fragments remained. In 2006, a man named James Roby published a fuel cell design nearly identical to Meyer's, under the name hydrogen fracturing technology. The patent cited similar waveform voltages and dielectric water chambers. Roby was later linked to a Department of Energy subcontractor in Illinois. And in 2017, during an unrelated electromagnetic propulsion test in Germany, anomalous oscillations were observed, matching Meyer's original circuit frequencies within 2%. The experiment was quietly discontinued. Stanley Meyer never received an obituary in major publications. But the water fuel cell design continues to circulate in underground engineering forums. No one has successfully recreated it in public view. Those who try usually stop communicating. If a car that runs on water was too dangerous to exist, then a machine that looks through time is something else entirely. One engineer lost custody of his daughter after being deemed mentally unfit due to extreme energy conspiracy claims. If science can heal you without drugs, what happens when it can show you the past without permission? But the waveform signature and its field anomalies would reappear again 3 decades later, inside a device rumored to view time itself. It was called Project Looking Glass. In the early 1990s, rumors began surfacing about a covert research initiative housed deep within S4, a restricted annex of the Groom Lake complex in Nevada. The name whispered among technicians and intelligence officers. Project Looking Glass. Its objective? Not energy, not propulsion, temporal access. According to whistleblowers Dan Burish and Bill Uhouse, the project centered on a device built around rotating torsion fields, utilizing counterspinning cylinders embedded with heavy isotopes. Specifically element 115, a substance publicly denied to exist until decades later. The machine allegedly created controlled distortions in space-time, forming a localized lens through which operators could view possible timelines. These weren't just visualizations, they claimed, but full environmental immersions of past or potential future events, accessed through quantum resonance with the Earth's magnetic field. Several timelines diverged dramatically after 2012. Some ended in societal collapse, others in peaceful global unification. All, according to the reports, were affected by a single variable: human consciousness. In 2003, Burish leaked diagrams of the core array. They showed interference ring generators remarkably similar to those found in Stanley Meyer's water resonance circuits, including identical frequency nodes at 432 Hz and 528 Hz. But within weeks, the leaks stopped. Burish was detained under NDA threat. Uhouse died shortly after from an alleged heart attack. The facility? Completely stripped. No official agency has acknowledged Looking Glass. The Department of Energy denied having any time viewing research. However, a 2014 patent, US 2014-02-82664A1, filed by an anonymous defense contractor, describes a device using rotational electromagnetic fields to generate nonlinear temporal fields. Language nearly identical to the leaked notes. One redacted footnote in that patent references temporal harmonics consistent with Meyer-type field collapse. The implications were staggering. If accurate, the machine didn't merely observe, it may have interacted. The Vatican's secret archives include a 1997 communique referencing foreign interest in chronodifferential technologies, recommending immediate information lockdown. Project Looking Glass was officially non-existent, but multiple insiders, from CIA liaisons to defense contractors, have confirmed something was dismantled at S4 in 2004, and none would speak on record. Dan Burish has not appeared in public since 2016. His last interview ended with the line, "The future isn't fixed, but someone thinks they can fix it." So what happens when someone builds a machine, not to see the future, but to make the rules of physics irrelevant? And just 1 decade after Looking Glass was shuttered, similar rotating field anomalies were rediscovered. Not in Nevada, but in declassified US Navy experiments from the 1950s. They were led by a man named Thomas Townsend Brown. And he wasn't studying time. He was trying to cancel gravity. If these first 3 were coincidences, Story 4 will test that theory. In 1955, physicist Thomas Townsend Brown submitted a series of experiments to the U.S. Navy demonstrating propulsion without combustion, fuel, or moving parts. The system relied on high-voltage capacitors. When charged, the devices moved, slowly at first, then with increasing velocity. Not from air pressure, but from what Brown called gravitic repulsion. The tests were repeated, again and again, in sealed vacuum chambers. No air, no thrust. The devices still moved. By 1956, Brown had filed multiple patents describing electrogravitic propulsion, a force generated by the interaction of electric fields with mass. His theory suggested that gravity itself could be manipulated by voltage differentials. And according to internal Navy memos, declassified in 2002, at least 3 of his experiments achieved anomalous lift exceeding baseline calculations. Brown's results were forwarded to Project Winter Haven, a classified Air Force initiative exploring next-generation propulsion. Diagrams from that era mirror the capacitor ring structures later found in McCandlish's ARV flux liner. But in 1957, Brown's work abruptly vanished from public record. He was reassigned. The Navy denied further involvement. Then in 1960, the Aviation Studies International Group, an internal Lockheed think tank, issued a confidential report predicting that electrogravitics could revolutionize aerospace flight by the mid-1970s. That report was buried. Brown left government research in 1967. In private correspondence, he wrote, "They told me this technology is 40 years too early, that it would collapse entire industries." After his death in 1985, most of his lab materials were seized by unknown parties. No formal archive exists. Only fragments remain, dusty files, blurred schematics, and one verified capacitor sled buried in a Virginia museum's off-limits storage wing. Then in 2004, a research group in Lyon, France, published lab notes confirming identical inertial effects using redesigned ceramic dielectric arrays, without knowledge of Brown's earlier work. Their funding was withdrawn 6 months later. The paper was never peer-reviewed. He never saw the propulsion systems he envisioned take flight. He died with his patents unlicensed and his name all but erased from academic history. They stopped propulsion. But what happens when someone builds a device that can stop disease? That story was never supposed to be told. But others took notice. One of them tried something even more radical, healing the body with resonance, not motion. His name was Royal Raymond Rife. In 1934, a San Diego-based inventor named Royal Raymond Rife unveiled a microscope capable of viewing live viruses, a feat not considered possible by optical means at the time. But it wasn't the microscope that drew government interest. It was what came next. Rife had identified what he called the mortal oscillatory rate, the precise frequency at which a virus or bacterium would shatter, like a wine glass exposed to the right pitch. Using a custom-built frequency generator, he exposed pathogens to pulsed radio waves tuned to their unique resonance signatures. The result, according to lab records and later affidavits, the pathogens disintegrated, while surrounding tissue remained unharmed. By mid-1934, 14 terminal cancer patients were enrolled in a trial conducted under supervision of medical doctors from USC. According to notes from Dr. Milbank Johnson, all patients showed full remission within 70 days. Rife had built what he called the beam ray machine, a non-invasive, frequency-based treatment capable of neutralizing diseases without drugs or radiation. His lab recorded film footage of destroyed viral agents, visible in real time under his unique universal microscope. But in 1939, the American Medical Association turned on him. The AMA demanded control over Rife's technology. He refused. Within months, his lab was raided. Equipment was seized. Research notes were destroyed. Dr. Buss Johnson died under unusual circumstances just before announcing public results. Witnesses were silenced. Rife's partners were threatened with license revocation if they continued association. The remaining machines were outlawed. Rife was discredited. He descended into alcoholism and died in obscurity in 1971. Some skeptics argue it was placebo or outright fraud. But the documented lab results and sworn statements by physicians involved tell another story. In 1986, one of the last surviving original devices resurfaced in a private medical archive in England. It emitted pulse trains at 330 MHz, nearly identical to frequencies later cited in declassified NSA documents on biointerference. And in 2002, a technician restoring vintage radios discovered an unmarked frequency generator in a New Mexico museum basement. Its tuning dials matched Rife's original schematics. He attempted to replicate Rife's experiments. Within weeks, he was contacted by regulatory authorities and instructed to surrender the device. He never heard from them again. He abandoned the project. His license was quietly suspended. But frequency-based manipulation of matter would appear again, not in biology, but in the very concept of time and vision. Because in the 1960s, a Benedictine monk inside the Vatican claimed to have built a machine that could see the past. They called it the chronovisor. In the late 1960s, a Benedictine priest named Father Pellegrino Ernetti claimed to have helped the Vatican build a device that could view the past. Not metaphorically, literally. He called it the chronovisor. The machine, Ernetti said, was the result of a secret collaboration between scientists and theologians. Among those named was Enrico Fermi, Nobel laureate and father of the nuclear age. The chronovisor used electromagnetic resonance and layered crystal arrays to detect residual energy imprints from historical events. According to Ernetti, time leaves a trace field, and under the right conditions, that field can be re-amplified. What the device allegedly produced was not a screen, but a three-dimensional holographic reconstruction. A window, not into alternate timelines, but into our own forgotten history. Ernetti described seeing Cicero's speeches, lost Greek plays, and most controversially, the crucifixion of Christ. He even provided a single photo, a blurred image of a suffering man on a cross. Critics dismissed it as a forgery. But decades later, no identical photograph has surfaced. According to Ernetti, the device was dismantled after Vatican officials concluded its power was too dangerous. It could see any moment in history. No secrets remained. A papal directive reportedly ordered it destroyed. Publicly, the Church denied the chronovisor ever existed. But in 2001, Italian journalist Franco Buccarelli published transcriptions of private interviews with Ernetti before his death. In them, the priest reaffirmed everything. He also included schematic fragments, electromagnetic lattice structures designed to entrain ambient chronofrequencies. Frequencies suspiciously close to those identified in Project Looking Glass documents. One Vatican communique, leaked in 1998, references a classified meeting on chrono-access containment. The subject line, temporal harmonic emissions, type 2 interference. On his deathbed in 1994, Ernetti allegedly recanted. But those close to him say the retraction was scripted, dictated under pressure. One friend quoted him as saying, "They will never allow humanity to see itself unfiltered. And if the past can be seen, could the body itself be rewritten?" Someone tried and vanished. The chronovisor, if real, offered not just the power to reveal the past, but to challenge every official version of it. Wars, assassinations, doctrines, all verifiable, all vulnerable. Ernetti never left the monastery after the project ended. He lived in silence, died in obscurity, but his notes remain in circulation, partial, fragmented, dismissed. Still, fragments of its core design now appear in speculative patents on quantum echo resonance. And while the Vatican claims nothing was ever built, the name chronovisor has been logged in at least 2 U.S. Defense Intelligence reports, both redacted. The past, it seems, can still be hidden, but the body holds memory too. One man tried to prove that electromagnetic fields could heal cells and reverse decay. His machine was outlawed. His name was Lakhovsky. From here on, the pattern stops asking for permission. In 1925, Russian engineer Georges Lakhovsky stood before the French Academy of Sciences and presented a device that, he claimed, could restore cellular vitality. He called it the multi-wave oscillator, MWO. The theory was radical for its time. Every living cell operates like a tiny radio receiver, resonating at specific electromagnetic frequencies. Disease, Lakhovsky believed, was not purely biochemical. It was vibrational interference. The solution? Reinforce healthy resonance using overlapping EM waves. His MWO emitted a broad spectrum of high-frequency pulses from 1 MHz to 300 MHz using concentric metal coils shaped like antennae. The subject would sit between them, immersed in oscillating fields. No contact, no surgery, no chemicals. In early trials, patients with tumors, degenerative disease, and chronic fatigue reported remarkable improvement. A 1927 study in Paris's Hôpital Saint-Louis documented partial tumor regression in 3 terminal cancer patients after 5 sessions. Photos showed visible shrinkage. Tissue samples corroborated it. Word spread. By 1931, versions of the MWO were in use across Europe, from clinics in Milan to experimental wards in Berlin. But the momentum didn't last. In 1942, Lakhovsky was struck by a car while walking near a New York hospital. He died days later. No driver was ever identified. His equipment was seized under wartime export restrictions. His remaining notes, 12 volumes, vanished from his apartment. Soon after, the French Ministry of Health banned all non-pharmaceutical electromagnetic therapy. The official reason? Public health risk. By the 1950s, Lakhovsky's name had all but disappeared from scientific literature. His devices were labeled quackery. Clinics were shut down. One technician was institutionalized after refusing to destroy his unit. He never saw his family again. But pieces survived. In 2018, a collector restoring Cold War surveillance tech in Belarus discovered a sealed crate marked MWO-3 Beta inside an abandoned Soviet lab. Inside, a multi-wave oscillator, nearly pristine, with French inscriptions and American soldering. The waveform matched Lakhovsky's original notes, which had reappeared just 2 years earlier in a rare manuscript auction in Zurich. The MWO emitted an unusual sideband frequency, 528 Hz, now known for its presence in certain DNA resonance therapies, and, notably, the same frequency logged in Meyer's water fuel cell and the Looking Glass array. It was the 3rd time the frequency appeared. No peer-reviewed replication has ever been published. But videos of modern replicas continue to circulate underground, mostly among biohacker communities. Some users report improved sleep. Others report seizures. Lakhovsky's grave is unmarked. What happens when matter itself starts breaking the rules? And the footage exists until it doesn't. But his waveform lives on, and in the next file, it appears to bend not matter, but reality itself. Because in Canada, A man named John Hutchison filmed objects melting, floating, and phasing through walls, and no one could explain how. In 1981, Canadian inventor John Hutchison accidentally triggered a phenomenon that has yet to be replicated or explained. Working out of a cluttered apartment in Vancouver, surrounded by surplus Tesla coils, Van de Graaff generators, and radio emitters, Hutchison was attempting to recreate Nikola Tesla's longitudinal wave experiments. What happened instead defied physics. He filmed metal bars levitating, fusing without heat, and in some cases, disappearing mid-air. A solid block of aluminum bent like putty. A piece of wood embedded itself into steel without any fracture. Batteries exploded silently. Objects hovered, spun, then dropped suddenly. These events became known as the Hutchison effect, a chaotic mix of gravitational anomalies, electromagnetic interference, and unexplained material reactions. No combustion, no moving parts, just frequency, voltage, and strange behavior. He documented everything on VHS tapes, grainy, unedited, and deeply unsettling. By 1983, defense contractors took notice. Representatives from the U.S. Army Intelligence and Security Command, INSCOM, visited his lab. Hutchison refused to hand over his equipment. Weeks later, his apartment was raided by Canadian authorities citing electrical code violations. Much of his hardware was confiscated or destroyed. When asked if government agencies had intervened, Hutchison replied, "They didn't want to shut me down. They wanted to own it." For years, skeptics claimed it was hoax. But engineers from Los Alamos and Lockheed visited his lab and witnessed effects firsthand. Some tried to replicate the phenomenon. None succeeded. One internal memo from 1988, obtained under Canada's Access to Information Act, mentioned unstable field interactions consistent with nonlinear resonance harmonics. The frequencies? 528 Hz. Again, same as Meyer's water cell, same as Lakhovsky's oscillator, same as Project Looking Glass. The breadcrumb reappeared, not as an echo, but as a fingerprint. In 1991, Hutchison relocated to Germany under undisclosed sponsorship. He ceased public demonstrations. Most of his original footage is now lost or degraded. But select fragments were preserved by independent researchers. One clip shows a 2-pound steel sphere lifting 6 inches and holding for 12 seconds. No wires, no magnets, just raw electromagnetic chaos. In 2007, fragments of a melted metal composite from his lab were tested at a Swiss Materials Institute. The alloy structure could not be replicated under standard metallurgical conditions. It exhibited interstitial blending between aluminum and iron, a combination considered thermodynamically unstable. John Hutchison lives in seclusion. He no longer speaks to the press. His final statement in 2011, "I didn't invent anything. I just interrupted the right fields at the wrong time. Then there was a machine the Nazis built, one that didn't break physics. It erased them. But the fields didn't stop. Because traces of Hutchison's configurations and Meyer's resonance cell reappear one final time, buried deep in a Nazi war archive. A file labeled simply Die Glocke, in the final years of World War II. Buried in the ruins of occupied Poland, Nazi scientists worked on a project so secretive it was never mentioned in Allied interrogations. It appeared in only one post-war intelligence file, Kriegsmarine SS Document 12246, recovered by British forces in 1946. It referred to an object simply as Die Glocke, the bell. Housed in a fortified mine near the Wenceslas complex, Die Glocke was described as a 2.7-meter tall metallic capsule, bell-shaped, made of an unknown alloy. Inside, 2 counter-rotating drums contained Zerum-525, a viscous, purplish mercury-like substance said to be highly radioactive. The device was powered by gigawatt-scale high-voltage discharges delivered through massive ceramic insulators. Witness accounts said that when activated, the bell emitted pulsating magnetic fields, and surrounding plants turned black. Time seemed to distort. Some scientists exposed to it reportedly suffered nerve damage, hallucinations, or vanished altogether. One German physicist allegedly wrote, "It was not a weapon. It was a key." Project leader SS General Hans Kammler, who also oversaw the V-2 rocket program, disappeared without a trace in May 1945. No grave, no record. U.S. intelligence never confirmed his capture. The Allied report, declassified in 1998, contains 3 surviving diagrams of Die Glocke. When overlaid with schematics from Project Looking Glass, the symmetry is unmistakable. Same double torus field array, same vertical coil shafts, same sealed containment unit. Even the control frequencies, if the notes are accurate, peaked at 528 Hz. It was the 4th time the frequency appeared. One 1963 CIA memo, recovered via FOIA, mentions a Bell-type device recovered under Operation Paperclip, but omits all location data. The memo is marked Eyes Only, Cross-Domain Interference. When reanalyzed in 2009, a Polish researcher noted that Die Glocke's core waveform patterns matched anomalies filmed in Hutchison's lab, including spontaneous levitation and material fusion. The waveform signature was identical to Meyer's fuel cell bursts. The containment ring matched Brown's capacitor sleds. And if all of that was just theory and rumor, then what happened in 2021 should have been impossible. The breadcrumb wasn't a coincidence. It was a map. By 2014, German aerospace contractor Daimler AG quietly filed a closed patent using rotating plasma for inertial field modulation. The patent was flagged and retracted. No explanation. And when satellite imagery revealed excavation at the original Wenceslas site in 2017, independent drone operators attempting to survey the area were detained and their equipment confiscated by Polish authorities, citing national security infrastructure. What was Die Glocke? A propulsion system? A temporal gateway? A dimensional lens? No official explanation has ever been offered. But the convergence is real. Because in 2021, a device appeared in Argentina that fused Meyer's resonance, Hutchison's harmonics, and Die Glocke's field geometry. And for 9 seconds, it defied the known laws of physics. The project had no name, only a code name, Epsilon. On June 3, 2021, a surveillance drone operated by the Argentine National Atomic Energy Commission recorded an anomaly near the outskirts of San Carlos de Bariloche, a remote Andean region long rumored to host remnants of Nazi escape networks. The drone captured 9 seconds of video before cutting out. In the footage, a metallic object, spherical, about 1.5 meters wide, hovered silently above the forest canopy. It shimmered with a faint corona. Then, without acceleration, it disappeared. Not upward, not downward. It folded out of view. 3 days later, the facility associated with the footage was raided. All digital archives were wiped. Employees were bound by new confidentiality agreements. The footage was never officially released. But one fragment leaked, a time-stamped segment without audio, uploaded anonymously to a secured server in Estonia. An embedded metadata tag read simply, Epsilon Prototype 03. In the weeks that followed, a former contractor contacted a European disclosure group. He claimed the device was the result of a black-budget collaboration between Argentine, German, and American defense subcontractors. The internal name, epsilon. The purpose, field detachment and reintegration. He described it as a hybrid array combining three components: a Meyer-style waveform resonance cavity, a Hutchison-type longitudinal energy pulse generator, a dual toroid containment ring identical to the Die Glock schematics. The operating frequency, 528 Hz. It was the fifth appearance of that number. Unlike its predecessors, epsilon had no visible power source. It required a three-stage field induction, after which the object reportedly dropped out of phase with ambient space. Attempts to retrieve it failed. Instruments recorded a gravitational spike, followed by EM silence. A 2052 Argentine intelligence memo, leaked and translated, stated, "Epsilon breach resulted in temporary topological instability. Subject could not be reacquired." The contractor later disappeared. His name was removed from employment records. His last known message, "We opened something, we couldn't close it." Forensic analysis of the leaked clip confirmed the light distortion consistent with gravitational lensing. Frame-by-frame enhancement revealed a thin band of magneto-optic refraction, nearly identical to the lensing seen in the few surviving Hutchison tapes. The project was immediately classified by Joint Countertemporal Command, a unit not acknowledged by any official government registry. The object, Prototype 03, was never recovered. Prototypes 01 and 02 are rumored to have failed during containment trials. There is no known Prototype 04. One invention being erased is a coincidence. 10 is a pattern. To this day, no one can confirm where or when the device is. And for the first time, a convergence was complete. Brown's gravitic sled, Meyer's resonance, Hutchison's effect, the Bell's geometry, all fused into one impossible craft. 9 seconds of proof, one erasure. Because when technology crosses the boundary between science and control, only one rule remains. Make sure no one ever sees it again. 10 stories, 10 disappearances, each linked not by ideology or geography, but by silence. These weren't rumors. They were documented, filed, patented, demonstrated, then erased. What connects them isn't just the technology, it's the pattern. The same waveform, the same geometry, the same consequences, invention, anomaly, suppression, disappearance, repeat. If this was fiction, it would be cleaner, simpler, with heroes and villains. But real files rarely come in order. They surface in fragments. They leave signatures behind. A death without a cause, a patent that vanishes, a frequency that keeps returning. Skeptics will say these stories are unrelated, that errors, fraud, or chance explain them, that no one is erasing the future because the future never arrived. And yet, 528 Hz appeared 5 times across 70 years. From a water engine to a field rupture, from cancer remission to gravitational collapse. One could argue none of this is real, but the records say otherwise. So here's the question. What kind of world are we living in if the technology that could free us is the one most violently hidden? What did we lose when the ARV never flew? When Meyer never finished his cell? When epsilon vanished, not into air but into something we don't yet understand? If you heard this, if the file reached you, what will you do with it? Archive it or burn it?